It's the best time of the year for Big Ten hockey fans. The conference tournament starts this weekend, and there's a lot to be excited about. Welcome back to another edition of Penn State Sports Night. I'm Ethan Ellis, and I'm joined by Josh Bartosik and Jacob Charis. The Nittany Lions are set to take on number 12 Ohio State in the Big Ten quarterfinals. Before we preview the best-of-3 series, let's take a look back at the regular season. Jacob, what were your overall thoughts on this season as a whole?
Well, it was safe to say it was a rebuilding year for the Nittany Lions. They lost to Wisconsin in the semifinals last year, and they lost even more talent this year. They lost Alex Limoges, Arnie Talvidia, but there were some bright spots. Some young freshmen stepped up. Ryan Kerwin led all freshmen with 28 points and also 11 goals. He was excellent. Also Danny Geniev, and also Jimmy Dowd Jr. on the back end, who took a really big step with 21 points that led Penn State defensemen. They also upset North Dakota in the Hockey Hall of Fame game in Nashville. But again, it was a rebuilding year. They did finish 5th in the Big Ten standings with 20 points.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Jacob, it was a rebuilding year. But I think there were flashes of brilliance. You know, they beat North Dakota in Nashville. They go to Minnesota. They split a series there. They come back home. They get a loss and a tie against this Ohio State team they happen to be playing. So they have a lot of brilliances and a lot of flashes of talent that they showed and progression. And one of those things is, you know, we mentioned offense. Kevin Wall's one of those. You know, last year he was a point-per-game player. Not as productive this year, but he still had 28 points, and he led the team with 15 goals. And you mentioned the freshman talent, Jacob. Danny Geniev was absolutely outshined by Ryan Kerwin because Ryan Kerwin just absolutely blew everyone away. But he had a very solid 18 points. And if you look at Geniev and Kerwin going into next year and years beyond that, I think that's a really solid foundation and a core that you can build upon for future years, future incoming classes coming in. But, you know, so the offense was definitely there. But the main issue this year was defense, and the transition game was absolutely poor. They could never get the puck out of their own end. It led to a lot of turnovers, led to a lot of goals, and ultimately cost them a lot of points in the Big Ten standings.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Penn State does have a really bright future with those freshmen. Now let's look forward to the weekend. In the season series against these two squads, Ohio State won 3 games and tied 1. The Buckeyes have surprised a lot of people, so Jacob, I'll bring it back to you. What's going to be the key for Penn State to pull an upset?
Stay out of the penalty box. The penalty killing unit has killed them all season long. 75%, which is 6th in the Big Ten. The only team worse than them is Wisconsin. Look, they have the ability to stay out of the penalty box. They've done it before, and it's worked. The home series against Wisconsin, I believe they only took 2 penalties, and I believe they didn't even take 1 in the first game. So they have the ability to do that. That's going to be the key because Ohio State's power play is really good. Georgi Merkulov has been great. He leads the Big Ten in scoring with 18 goals. And you know what? Jakub Dobeš, 6'4", probably by far the Big Ten goalie of the year favorite and also maybe freshman of the year. He's been lights out, and you got to get bodies to the front of the net. Along with the PK, you need to get bodies in front of the net as much as possible. And Ohio State, they're a structured team. Guy Gadowski talked a lot about how they're structured. They play that neutral zone trap. So you got to really work with speed into the neutral zone.
Yeah, you mentioned Jakub Dobeš, who was a fantastic goalie and a consistent one for the Ohio State Buckeyes. But for the Penn State Nittany Lions, that's kind of been their downfall. They don't really have a consistent #1 goaltender. You know, they did the 2 goalie split for the majority of the second half of the regular season, and it had very mixed results. Both goalies, in Oscar Audio and Liam Solier, had about a 3 goals against average hovering around there and hovering around a .900 save percentage. So neither one did great. Solier had a little bit better numbers, but Oscar has the experience, and we heard from Guy Gadowski earlier this week that Liam Solier is going to get the start in Game 1, but we don't know if he's going to get the start in Game 2, so we'll have to wait on that. You got to pick a goalie, you got to stay consistent, and then you also have to limit the turnovers. I mentioned it earlier about getting the puck out of your own end and the breaks. They are really bad at transition offense and transition defense. If you limit the turnovers, you can possibly, you know, snag a game or two, because they had, near the end of the season, some really good games against Minnesota at home in their final series at home, but they kept giving the puck up in their own end. It led to some back-breaking goals, some heartbreakers. And then another thing, you know, this team knows that they can compete. They've shown the promise. They know they have the talent. And the best way to show that is to act like you've been there. Ohio State's 3 out of their top 4 point getters are all freshmen, and 3 out of the top 4 Penn State point getters are upperclassmen. So for these Ohio State Buckeyes, you know, it's their first time. We don't know how they're going to adjust. Can they adjust can they, is the spotlight too big for them? Whereas the Nittany Lions, they might want to rely on that veteran pressure or presence. Kevin Wall's been there before. Connor McEachran's been there before. So you have those veteran guys that know what it's like to be in the Big Ten tournament, might be a slight upper hand.
Well, you guys both make really good points, and it shows that I think Penn State has definite, clear parts of the game that they really need to work on. So with those keys in mind, Josh, we'll throw it back to you. What do you see Penn State getting an upset win here?
I see them maybe stealing a game if they're lucky, but there's no way they come out of Ohio with a W and moving on to the semifinals. I mean, Ohio State is just a much better team. If it goes to 3, Ohio State's easily winning it. Jakob Daubas, as we've mentioned, has been a fantastic goaltender for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he's just, I mean, he is unreal. He, in the last series against Penn State that was at Pagula Ice Arena, only gave up 2 goals in that second game. There was a 6-0 blowout. He had the shutout, and a lot of people mention the scoring of Merkulov and guys like that, but no one mentions Jake Wise. Jake Wise had 2 goals and 2 assists in the last series against Penn State, so I expect Daubas and Jake Wise to ultimately lead Ohio State over Penn State and take them to the semifinals.
Yeah, I just don't see it. And you're going to be without Chase McClain, who I've said is probably the most improved player on this team. Penn State, in their last series against Michigan State, they struggled in the faceoff dot. They won 60 combined faceoff and were 43% on Saturday. That's a huge loss, and it's all about possession when you're talking about faceoffs. And Penn State really didn't have a lot of those, high danger chances. And I like how you mentioned turnovers. That's going to be another killer. Ben Copeland had an egregious turnover in game 2 against Minnesota. He just threw it right at the middle of the ice. Excuse me, it was actually game 1. And Ohio State's, like I said, they're a team that's going to bite you if you manage the puck poorly in your own zone. So I don't see it. I think Penn State's going to get swept.
We will just have to see how things play out for the Nittany Lions. That's going to do it for this edition of Penn State Sports Night. For Josh Bartosik and Jacob Charis, I'm Ethan Ellis, and have a great night.
Hey everybody! Thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.